going on, everybody? I go by the name of Kari, and I want to thank you guys for joining me here today on SneakerPhetish. A little while ago, Nike introduced the Air Force One N.354 program, otherwise known as the Air Force One Experimental Series. Now, this series introduced different materials that were used to kind of experiment, for lack of a better term, with different ways that Air Force Ones and different sneakers back before the Air Force One could be utilized. Today, we're taking a look at the latest in the experimental Air Force One series, and if you want my opinion, it's one of the worst sneakers I've ever seen. Let's get to it. Boom. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Nike Air Force One Experimental Postal Ghost. I don't normally tell Nike that something is like a flat out bad shoe, but this right here was just a waste of an Air Force One. I mean, for all of this, y'all really could have just gave me another all white. This was a waste. This is really bad. Nobody's gonna wear it. The design is kind of dumb and the materials make even less sense. It's a bad shoe, and all of those things apply for me with this sneaker here. We'll get into the backstory because it actually is interesting how Nike almost got sued over this shoe after we take a little deeper look at the sneaker itself. All right, starting with the upper of the shoe. Now, with the experimental series, one common theme of all the experimentals is this foam upper on the shoes. So the whole shoe is extremely soft. It just completely folds in. It's this really, really soft foam upper. Now, wrapped around that white foam upper and actually wrapped around the midsole as well is this packing tape looking material. I'm not sure exactly what material this is, but it's made to mimic packing tape here. And you see it says Air Force One all throughout that upper packing tape as well. Now, on top of that packing tape, you also see the red N.354 insignia. That's on pretty much all of the experimental Air Force One series. That 354 program, again, being the program that kind of spearheaded a lot of use of mixing and matching materials to experiment with different combinations for Air Force One sneakers. Taking a top-down look at the shoe here, this is where it gets interesting because you see this kind of lace toggle system, this little lace pulley system here. The experimental Air Force One series actually was inspired by an oxygen mask that was used in the brand sports research lab. So I'm pretty sure that this little toggle here, because you see it on all of the different experimental Air Force Ones, was taken directly from that oxygen mask. One thing to note as well is that the tongue on these is actually deconstructed. I'm not sure why, but I do understand that with the experimental series, they do play around with deconstructing a lot of materials as well. Another cool touch on the tongue I did like is the stitched Nike Air kind of off center on the side of the tongue there. It's kind of hard to see, but it actually is a cool touch too. I like that. All white laces with these blue lace tips, of course, going in with that USPS priority mail theme. Moving around to the heel of the shoe, this is where it starts to get interesting. The first thing you'll notice is that upside down Nike Air, which is a cool little touch here underneath that packing tape, and slapped right on top of that packing tape here, looking just like a USPS priority mail label, except wherever the USPS logo would go, it's replaced by a Nike N.354 for everyday use, summer 2021 label right on top of the packing tape. Very interesting approach with these. White midsole with that kind of USPS looking blue on the outsole as well. And on the insole of the shoe, you get that same USPS blue insole and written in red. You see again that explanation that the experimental Nike Air Force One series was based off of the oxygen mask used in the Nike Sports Lab. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the Postal Ghost Experimental Air Force One N.354. Now, let's talk a little bit about the controversy around the sneaker if you guys aren't already familiar with the story. Back around May-ish, April or May or so, I want to say, it was a lot of noise around this sneaker. When I first saw it, I actually wanted to get my hands on it early, but for the prices that people were asking for them, it was not worth it. But some early images leaked of this sneaker shortly before a few retailers would actually start getting pairs in their stores of this shoe. And once the images leaked, the USPS took to the internet on their own website to make a statement basically saying that the USPS, because it is a not-for-profit entity and because all of their money is made off of their packaging materials, using the likeness of their packing materials was a violation on Nike's behalf, and if needed, the USPS was going to do whatever they needed to do up to and including legal action to get remedies for the fact that Nike had basically ripped off their design. Well, after that announcement came out, it really started circulating throughout the internet a lot, and people started getting very interested in these ugly sneakers all of a sudden. Well, all of a sudden, these sneakers became a lot more attractive to people like the resellers, because if we know anything, even if a sneaker is but ugly controversy sells. So a lot of resellers were then trying to get their hands on them and start selling them for way over retail price, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. Fast forward a little bit, I believe around mid-May, the USPS and Nike ended up coming to an agreement and formally announcing that this sneaker was on its way out. Now, granted, this is not an official collaboration with the United States Postal Service. The USPS insignia, branding, and logos are nowhere on this sneaker. But what I'm pretty sure ended up happening is that one, the USPS is either getting royalties off the sales of this shoe, or two, Nike just cut the USPS a fat check for licensing their likeness of materials for the ability to make this sneaker. If you want my opinion, they probably did the latter. They probably did number two, where they just cut them a check for a licensing fee from the USPS so that they could go ahead and use these materials and the likeness. But the funny thing about Nike using these materials and this likeness on this shoe is that it was happening at the exact same time that Nike was starting to sue a bunch of customizers for doing the exact same thing that Nike themselves were doing to the USPS. Hypocritical? Maybe so. If you guys have been keeping up with the news lately, Nike has been going after big customizers, small customizers, anybody that they deem necessary to try to shut down their business from using the likeness of Nike trademarked and branded logos that the brand owns. And that goes for anything from custom sneakers like Cool Kais and other sneakers that look like Air Jordan 1s to clocks, stools, anything that features the branding or logo that Nike themselves did not put their official stamp on. Maybe it's just a money thing. Maybe Nike is just cocky and feels like they have enough firepower and lawyer fees and stuff like that to be able to just make a shoe like this, but I have no clue how Nike thought that they were gonna be able to get away with making this shoe and the USPS wasn't gonna have a fit over it. But I also find it equally interesting that if Nike were to pull off something like this, why they would wanna go after suing so many other really talented customizers and designers for doing pretty much the exact same thing, because it causes confusion in the marketplace. Literally everything that Nike is suing all these other customizers for these days, they were guilty of doing with this sneaker. It's confusing. It could potentially dilute the brand of the USPS. Say, for instance, if somebody's not a fan of Nike, but they like the USPS, I don't really know why, that could potentially dilute the brand of the USPS. And not only that, it looks terribly similar to the USPS insignia. So everybody that looked at this sneaker, myself included, thought that this was an official collaboration with the USPS, and it wasn't. So the USPS would have perfectly been within their rights to sue Nike, and they probably would have won. It just goes to show you that even though Nike may stand on a certain moral ground, does not mean that they're automatically willing to stand on that same moral ground when it comes to making dollars for themselves. But at the end of the day, business is business, and you guys know how I am. I never knock the hustle. So that's pretty much all that I have to say about the Postal Ghost experimental Air Force One. Now it's time for you guys to sound off down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about these. Are you feeling them, or are you like me and just really not feeling these, or are these a hard pass for you? You guys are probably gonna say these are a hard pass, because if y'all ever saw me with these on my feet at a sneaker con, I want you guys to come and smack me in the head and ask me why I have these on my feet. Please, I give you permission to do that. Of course, where you guys are down in the comments, make sure that you click on that subscribe button so we can welcome you into the Sneaker Fetish family, to make sure you don't miss out on any more shoes that come through like these, because I guarantee you I got a lot more heat on the way. As always, I want to thank you guys for joining me here today on Sneaker Fetish, taking a look at these with me, unboxing them with me for a couple of minutes. I go by the name of Kari. This is the Air Force One experimental Postal Ghost, and until next time, I'm out.